Welcome to the Phillip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Phillip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode. Today I'm happy to have Tyler Day joining. Tyler and I are connected on LinkedIn and recently contacted Tyler about being a guest on my podcast. So welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, Phillip. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. So I guess you probably, I don't know if you got familiar with the podcast from Michael Kim's episode or
yes. So
you just
I've known about it for a while, right? I've watched a couple here and there, and then when I saw Mike pop on, I'm like, oh, that's terrific. Mike and I used to work together for a little bit, about a year or so ago. So, I found that as hey, this is a great opportunity. Let me see if Phillip's interested and kind of digging into some of the stuff that I've got.
Okay.
So,
well, thanks for joining. I appreciate you taking the time out today. Did you,
of course,
get to enjoy the eclipse?
Yeah, it was, of course, with New York having, clouds every single day, no matter what time of the day or year it is. We're always very cloudy up here, so a lot of folk were concerned if we were going to be able to see it or not. But where we were at, up in my neck of the woods, we got a pretty good view of it. I know some folk traveled a couple hours toward like Buffalo, Rochester, Niagara Falls area to get like the 100% totality, but we ended up with like 99.7.8, so it was close enough. So
well, that's good. Yeah, it's a lot of people were traveling to Texas, so it was kind of crazy the amount of people traveling here. I think the hotels in downtown Dallas were at 90% capacity or something along those lines.
Yeah, we had I don't remember what hotel we had, but I think it was in the Syracuse area, maybe further out. They all got booked up, and last minute, they canceled everybody's reservation. Couldn't tell you why. It was just kind of something I saw floating around on Facebook or something I was made privy to, so it was interesting. Like, that's a lot of lost revenue there.
Yeah, that is too bad for the people, too, that had their plans canceled.
Exactly, if they came out of state or something.
Interesting enough, one of the small towns in Texas filed a disaster or whatever claim or whatever state of disaster, just in case, to make sure they had the resources if there was any issues. That way they could easily get resources if they needed to.
No, that makes total sense. I don't know if we got a state of emergency issued. I don't think so. I'm sure if we did, I just kind of overlooked it. But no, I could totally see that being a valid thing. A large group of people in very specific areas. That's one thing that, kind of keeping in the back of my head as to why I didn't really venture out too much anywhere. Could just be the erring on the side of caution / paranoia. But, yeah, a lot of people at the office took today off. So it was me and like 4 other people that, toughed it out today and came into work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it was that one small city that I know of. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I saw a friend or someone had posted up at their school, which is kind of lame that their kids, I don't know what grade they're in, but it's some K through 12 student. But they had some kind of message going out that they wouldn't get an excused absence to take off for a full day for the eclipse. I'm thinking, what?
That's terrible. Yeah, they closed.
It is.
Dare I say all of the schools around my area, but they closed pretty much all of them, so everybody got a free day off. And I think that's also because we had a mild winter, so a lot of the districts didn't use a lot of snow days, so they're just kind of giving it back. Yeah,
it's too bad that school did. I'm sure whoever my friend was took their kid out of school, but it's an educational experience. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be an angry letter written to the superintendent by that parent.
Yeah. So before we get started, why don't you share your hacker, introduce yourself, share your hacker origin story, and then kind of what you're doing these days.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So my hacker origin story. Okay. So I started I guess in a professional aspect in terms of, how I kind of came into this field, right? I've always had a slight interest in, not to follow the cliche of, oh, I saw it on TV, or I was a young kid disassembling computers or Xboxes or other game consoles to see how they work. I kind of fell in line with that, but not too terribly much, as a lot of some of the other people's stories kind of unfold into. But I was kind of hovering around that same area, right? I've always had an interest in, obviously, as a younger kid, video games and understanding the back ends and how things work, dismantling, dismembering, or taking apart different computers and stuff, and hoping to God I can put them back together. Most of the time that didn't work. So that's kind of got me an interest into computers in general, and it really started to hit around, I'd say, late high school. I kind of got turned on to the idea of like the whole cybersecurity thing and kind of what that entails. And one of the local colleges around here, universities, was really kind of taking that effort headstrong, so to speak. So, that was kind of an interest in where I wanted to go to pursue it, to learn. It didn't have a ton of what to expect going. I don't think most high school students do. Some do, but I definitely did not fall under that echelon that did. So I was interested, and applied, got in. And was at the beginning of this new curriculum that my college was kind of experimenting, i.e. being in like their third or fourth year, maybe fifth year of actually conducting like a cyber practice. So it was still in its infancy stage, but some areas were ironed out. And I think we could talk more about that specific part on like kind of my ideas on college and versus like self-study, which you can get now versus what we kind of had the ability to get, when I went through school like 5-6 years ago. But started getting introduced into some of the kind of core fundamentals, and I'm like, this is boring. Where's all this hacking stuff that I see on TV? And then Mr. Robot came out, and that is what kind of sealed the deal for me. I'm like, this looks awesome. It looks pretty legit. And I was like my second year in college, so I was still pretty green, had a slightly more of an edge to kind of knowing what people are talking about in terms of, the general umbrella of cyber and what pen testing, hacking looked like. And then I saw Mr. Robot come out, and I fell headfirst into that, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. I enjoy this a lot. I like the good side of it, right? Don't want to err on the side of caution on any legalities for that, but that's what kicked it off. And then I just kind of figured out, all right, well, how can I get more involved in this? What does my college have that I can, what parts can I start getting involved with? Is there any clubs? Is there any extracurricular activities? Stuff like that. Hackathons would kind of come and go. I was still too green to even kind of put my hat in there. And it's kind of one of those self-confidence things, which I'd like to kind of touch on a little bit later too. But I'm like, you know what? Let me just get my fundamentals straightened out, and I would try to hack some of my computers I had at home, and it would be very, very, very bad, very, very just unstructured, uncalculated, just kind of a mess. So fumbling through it at the very beginning. And, as some time went on, I found more and more of an interest in it, and I'm like, this is something I want to keep learning. And then I got my first real job, right? And that was, I think, early 2018. I moved down to South Carolina for this opportunity. It was actually funny. I applied, and a lot of the job recs or the descriptions were talking about, there's pen testing involved and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is great, and not knowing how involved it would be or what I'd need to bring to the table. So I applied. I got an interview. They explained what the role would be. I felt that I did okay. My very first professional interview. So that from my understanding, went fair. They come back a day later and say, nope, sorry, we don't want you. And I'm like, I'm not going to take no as an answer. So I actually emailed the hiring manager, right, my boss, back, and I said, I'm not going to, paraphrasing, but I said, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I need this job, right? Can you please hire me? And he's like, you know what? to heck with it. Sure, why not? So he ended up, recounting on his denial, and they offered me the position. So that was interesting. So I was very happy. Had to move down literally in about 2 weeks from upstate New York all the way down to South Carolina, and getting introduced in a professional manner to cybersecurity, to endpoint engineering and security, and to pen testing. Definitely drinking from a fire hose, right? So I would go home every day because I didn't have any family or friends down there, right? My girlfriend at the time was still located up here. And I'm just like, well, this is all on me, right? All the individuals at the company were very, very intelligent. Nobody, I don't think we all played well in the sandbox together. But I was like 8 to 10 years younger than everybody else. I was 21, almost 22, and everybody was in their, late 30s. So, couldn't really connect too terribly much. So I just was kind of like alone. So that's where I spent a lot of time just practicing, studying, and then I found Hack the Box as a thing. Started getting involved in that, tried to ask people at work, and got a little bit of help with that. And then, the more and more I went to work every day, right, trying to exercise these new skills that I learned, I wasn't given the whole opportunity to utilize that. So, and at the time, I'm like, is this really what I want to do? I like the pen testing aspect. What I'm learning here is extremely valuable, but I'm just not really jiving with the culture. And that, young, naive. So I think there very well could have been discrepancies on both ends, right? My end and the guys I was working with. And I'm like, you know what? I want to get back home. Let me see if there's opportunities back up in the upstate area. And, that's where I ended up getting, my opportunity now. So, fast forward like a year, bringing us to the end of 18. I applied for my current role, started off as a security engineer. Pen testing was talked about, not so much involved as much with the specific type of security engineering testing that we did lab-based assessment-wise. Pen testing wasn't, again, like I said, at the forefront. It was a piece, and then that started to kind of get added to. It got more visibility, more traction, and then the individuals that were conducting these pen tests on these specific systems at the time, our clients and customers enjoyed that, so we ended up getting more funding, and that capability, that task grew, which means work was coming in more frequently, i.e. requiring additional staff, more staff, to do it in a more than just a intermediary or an intermediate amount of time. And I was lucky to find myself transitioning into that in a full-time capacity just only a few years ago. So that's kind of how I started, at a younger age, kind of going through high school, kind of what really turned me on to it, going through college, kind of fumbling through it myself. A lot of my friends at the time weren't, in the same field, right? So I didn't have a lot of people to reach out to for suggestions, for feedback, for anything like that. I couldn't really talk to my parents, right? They're not tech savvy. So I was just like, I'm all by myself. I didn't know of any forums or any Discord channels at the time that I could connect with a community. It was just, I'm lone wolfing this. So it paid off, but it took a while. So yeah, I'll just kind of give some backstory on that.
So once you achieved getting to do pen testing, was it what you expected?
No. I again fell into the cliche of, it's going to be like how it is in the TV shows and stuff. Not as much as a person who doesn't have an idea of how the cyber field works. But I think the thing that tripped me up is the amount of trial and error and banging the head against the keyboard that I was anticipating, but didn't really know how much it would be until like I actually started doing it. And at that point it became, problem solving. This is a puzzle. I'm at point A. I need to get to X to Y. What is my path to get there? So, I'm going to fumble along the way. I'm going to run into obstacles. It's like, I claimed it as like a maze, right? I felt like I was going through a maze from the very first couple times, and that's kind of how still some of the engagements are. But yeah, so that's kind of how I perceived it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to put in some work, but it was definitely like, oh, okay, there's a lot more involvement in compensating circumstances, that encompass a system that requires a pen test. The understanding of what the program potentially is written in, what operating system it's living on, just access control and firewalls, and a lot of just outside stuff that at the time I didn't think about. But obviously being more cognizant with more experience under my belt. So yeah, that's kind of what what my first experience was to what it is now, and that's completely changed. So
Yeah, based on my experience and what I've seen, I think it's more difficult than what people really expect it to be.
yeah,
Starting out, because you think of previous roles. So I got my start as a sysadmin, got my first security role, worked kind of on the defensive side, moved into AppSec and then pen testing. But it's just out of the things I've done, it was probably the most difficult thing to learn for me. Because this is even like my sysadmin career. I was certified twice as an MCSE, which wasn't an easy certification. Also had the CNE, the Novell Netware certification,
wow,
which wasn't easy, and then the Cisco CCNA. But going through that stuff was kind of difficult. But then once getting into the pen testing part, trying to learn the hacking piece was a challenge. It seems like you really have to spend more time outside work studying than you do some other areas.
100% agree. And I dare I say this, but I will stand by this statement. Out of all of the major pillars that we see in cyber, I believe that pen testing is the and I hope people aren't super offended by this, but pen testing is the only pillar where you are by nature required to continuously study and practice in work, out of work, when you have free time, as opposed to, with all due respect to the wonderful people who conduct, like cyber analyst work and different, just security engineering roles. They aren't necessarily unwrittenly expected to practice, security engineering outside of work. But for pen testing, that is a whole different story, right? There's, if we're going on an engagement in a couple weeks to a month, and there's a new TTP that exists from some sort of APT that, just recently hit a similar client of ours, for example, it would be advised that we go ahead and try to understand how that threat actor is completing this kill chain, this attack via this kill chain, which means we need to go out and prepare for that. And by preparing for those, to mimic that, we need to get to that level. So how do we get to that level? Well, we have to practice and we have to prepare for it and train for it, exercise those, the constant, I'm always having to come home and study and learn. And, to some people, it can get to be a bit much. I enjoy it. There are times where I'm like, man, this is definitely a lot. This is a lot of work. Everybody that I go to work with, some of them come home and just hang out. And I'm like, well, I got to practice this. I've got an exam I got to, study for. So let me go and train some more. But no, 100%. I think this is the only pillar within the cyber field that requires you to do as much work as you do in work outside of work. It's like another full-time job, right? So
yeah, I think that's another reason. There's sometimes a case for or motivation for some folks to specialize in an area, because trying to understand web application pen testing, mobile app pen testing, network pen testing, cloud pen testing, all that at a really high skill level is kind of difficult to really master all those different areas. There's some people that do it, but I know personally for myself, it was really kind of hard to really get really good in one area, trying to keep up with, all the different areas.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's keeping up with the Joneses on that. And it's like, am I required to be the jack of all but master of none? Or like, what is expected of a pen tester? I would say you have to be competent in, most areas, right? Web, network, and Mobile, we don't see mobile come through our neck of the woods too much, but like, infrastructure based, like AWS or cloud in general, right, becoming extremely more prevalent in the, security computer ecosystem. So, I mean, there are opportunities for you to be a, subject matter expert in a specific pillar, but I look at it as why, pen tester is doing a job for client. This client is expecting me to find stuff. So I need to find whatever it is via their infrastructure part, networking part, web aspect. So therefore I need to be close to a mastery in all three of those. And it is definitely, yeah, no, to your point, it's a pain, and it's definitely, I think it can wear, people down quite a bit. I've got to spend time understanding specific web app stuff, right? Maybe my cross-site scripting isn't as strong as my Active Directory or vice versa. And I need to spend a considerable amount of time on that because the system that we're, testing in 2-3 weeks is web heavy, right? Or has both presences, and then we add in the fact of, if we're bringing, new individuals along, I need to be that much more on my game so that, they don't look at me like a fool, and I can actually teach them some valuable stuff, whether they, if I place them on the web portion, I need to be competent in web so I can direct them in the appropriate direction and not have, everybody have egg on their face at the end of the day. So, and like to your other point too is, like my friends and family and stuff, like, oh, well, you're a hacker, you can break into this, and that, right? And it's like, well, it's not that simple. You see these breaches and stuff that happen out in the, in the news and stuff, and it's like people think, oh, well, that must have just happened. Well, it probably took them 3 to 5 to 6 months with a team or, a group of, threats, money, a vast amount of resources. It's not most of the time, right? It's not just some dude sitting in his basement, though there are some situations where it is, but like a lot of these major attacks aren't done, with pure luck, right? Shooting from the hip. These are calculated attacks. So, and then when you try to convey that part to them, you kind of like have them lose their interest in your credibility, and then the conversation just kind of gets awkward at that point.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you deal with friends and family, people outside of the industry, how sometimes I seem to think they believe getting hacked is a lot easier than what it is. I mean, I think they just downplay it because you hear some cases where we've had cases where people come into like Dallas Hackers Association, a group that I go to most months, and there's people come in and you hear some of these stories about, yeah, my ex hacked me, and you hear all this stuff they're doing. If they were really doing that, they just had like the skills of probably a nation state hacker or something. And sometimes it's paranoia. Maybe they really didn't do that, or yeah, it's just pretty interesting. So, since you've kind of been through the drill, you've kind of taught yourself, and combination of the education you got from college to become a pen tester. So based on what you've learned, is there anything you do different?
I would put myself out there in a more vulnerable sense in events, right? We do have some hackathons that come around our area, and that's something that I shied away from because I'm like, I don't have the chops, I don't have the skills to do this. Had I've done so, I could have met some more intelligent people. And the golden, rule is if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to change the room, right? So being in events like this would have given me the opportunity to learn from other individuals. I steered away from that for some reason. For some reason, it didn't occur to me that I should put myself, out of my comfortability zone and give it a try. Yeah, I mean, if I fall on my face, okay, I'll pick myself up. I'll learn. At the time, I wasn't thinking like that. And even to like this day, it's easier said than done. But I would put myself out there more seeking advice, seeking mentorship. I would ask more questions. I wouldn't reserve as much as I did and be like, well, I feel like I'm supposed to know that. Because a lot of the time when we're in conversations with folk, when you're doing presentations in class, or even when you first started out in your career and you're in a a Teams meeting or something with your boss and other engineers, and all these verbiages are being thrown out, and you're like, I don't know what any of you people are saying right now. Oh, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. I don't want them, to look at me like I'm a buffoon here. Yeah, of course I know what you guys are talking about. Situations like that, I think, can definitely hinder growth, and as much of a uncomfortable setting as it might be to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm not exactly sure what you guys are talking about. Can you fill me in on? Can you give me a resource that I can go and research on my own? That skill, I think, is developed through just life, right? I didn't get that. I mean, we got it's okay to ask questions in college and stuff like that, but bringing yourself to that point to do that, I don't think is something that is taught. I think you just have to experience it, get enough. Like, hey, at this point, I don't care what you think about me. I am asking a specific, question. I am unsure of something. So I would change that part for sure. I would have also, at the time, I don't think a lot of tutorials, or trainings, lectures, whatever you want to call them, were available on the internet, or maybe I just didn't know exactly where to look, which then circles back to failing to reach out more for help, resource, and guidance, right? But, kind of in 2024, if I was just starting out, at my age currently, those would have been like the very first couple things I would have done differently. Reach out more to people, ask those difficult questions, put myself in the spotlight and be vulnerable, and research, through tutorial videos on YouTube. And heck, I still use them today. There's still a lot of great stuff that pops up on YouTube that I have some of our folk that we work with go ahead and utilize. But yeah, no, that's kind of what I definitely would have done a little differently had I had more of the background knowledge, confidence to do so. But, that's then kind of learning from then and passing that note, right, paying it forward to folk that we're in my shoes now.
So what are your thoughts on certifications and degrees?
You need both. If you, people are definitely going to be unhappy with that statement. I think, in my opinion, I think it's good to have both. Do I think you need to go out and get a doctorate degree and spend $200,000 in student loan debt to get the same knowledge and or opportunities as Tom, Dick, and Jane? No. I think it comes down to how much hard work can you put in, what can you show for it. Certifications is a big help with that. So the specific type of certifications is also crucial as well. If, for example, if I'm a hiring manager and I am trying to recruit somebody for pen testing, I want to see if this is a junior role, a mid role, or a senior role. What am I going to specifically look for? There are some people who look at, degrees as can they learn, can they research, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking individuals with, who are in this spot for hiring, for example, right? And I could be completely wrong, but this is just my assumption that, I see that this individual has an associate's degree, this individual does not. From my perspective, that doesn't matter too much to me, but in somebody else's perspective, it could indicate, this person shows a little more dedication. They can, what's the best word I'm looking for? They can learn easier, if that's the appropriate, they can research and they know how to study, right? And I say that in a loose term. Obviously, individuals are different, but it shows, a little more forethought and dedication. Again, not in a negative sense, but there are employers out there who do think like that. So that is something to be aware of. For certifications from that aspect, I don't think there's any bad certifications, but if I want to go do pen testing, I don't think it would be wholeheartedly necessary for me to fall down the path of getting, a cert that may not align to that, right? Obviously we want to stick with the basics of like Sec Plus, networking cert, whether you're a CCNA guru or you like Net Plus, and then following into specific niches like Pentest Plus, CEH, and then grow up from there. That doesn't mean that I can't go out and get like a cloud cert, but getting a cloud cert and I want to do pen testing, I got to stay within the same sandbox. So There is one cert that I am not typically a big fan of. I and a lot of the folks I work with know that I'm not a huge CEH person. I think Pentest Plus offers the same level of knowledge, and I hope again people don't send hate mail in my inbox for that. But it's cheaper. I believe it's got the same amount of useful material in there, though the CEH, I believe, has that CEH Mastery Practical. Pentest Plus obviously doesn't, but that's where you take that opportunity to go to the next level, right? If you fall headfirst and you enjoy the pen testing part, you've got your Pentest Plus, go to SANS, right? Do GPen. Go up to OSCP after that, right? Collect those check boxes kind of off the way. So I think ultimately overall it is more beneficial for an individual to have a degree and a pretty recognizable certification. I think it all is in the eye of the beholder on, if it really is going to deter potential hiring managers away from you. If I come in with a master's and Joey next to me comes in with a bachelor's degree, we've got the same accolades, right? Same attributes. Who is most likely going to get picked at that point? So there's that side of the coin that I think individuals need to be focused on. Personally, for me, I mean, you can learn everything that you need from the internet right now, right? I can go and buy books. I can go ahead and do some pretty good YouTube searches, and I could learn pretty much what a curriculum would teach me at a university for free or with a couple bucks if I wanted to subscribe to, some cyber security show out there, like the Cyber Mentor. He did great material there, and I know he recently just launched his well, maybe not recently, but just launched his platform that it's paid for, and I think he's sponsored with eLearn, which I think changed now. I don't know exactly what they're called now, but there you can get like your PNPT or EJPT. That doesn't cost $7,000 a semester to do that. But, obviously I'm thinking when you're coming to a job and I'm put up next to individuals who have degrees, that's where I think your skills and your certifications can potentially outweigh, a degree, but you need to find, the cliched right place, right time. So that's kind of where my thoughts lie in at. I know I hope that wasn't too like open ended, but I'm kind of hovering over several answers to that.
Yeah. And so earlier you kind of mentioned going back to and talking about confidence. And I think that's a good topic. And one of the things I want to expand upon before you respond is we hear the term, and not saying it's wrong, but I wonder how often it's really imposter syndrome or just a lack of confidence. I think expanding past just saying imposter syndrome and calling it lack of confidence is more universal, because in some cases, I experience this myself and a lot of other people experience that. But is it truly imposter syndrome, lack of confidence? Are they really synonymous? I mean, because syndrome would mean it's just some kind of state or something that you're afflicted with, and then lack of confidence, I think it seems to be more fitting. But as far as confidence, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if you continuously mentally put yourself in a state, and this is something I do struggle with as well. Sometimes, I still do struggle with some of this just a little bit, but I think it's a state of mind in which you put yourself in. If you are constantly saying, I am never going to be as good as the person next to me, that is where I think the syndrome part kicks in. You develop yourself a complex, and then that eventually could bleed into and show in your work. And then you've just kind of wished that into existence. As far as the lack of confidence part, yeah, that is 100% a thing. And I don't think it can be synonymous, again, if you continuously put yourself in that mental state every time, all the time, no matter what you're doing in the pen testing world. For most of us, I would, if I could freely speak, that it would fall down to just the pure lack of confidence. I've, for example, right, been a pen tester for X amount of years. I've got XYZ certs. I'm considered a senior, for example. And then, guy fresh out of college gets hired, right, has some pretty high level certs, and he's just knocking everything out of the park. Now it's like, well, this guy just kind of came in, hot and heavy, and I've been doing this for X amount of years now. There is a little bit of, well, man, this guy's only just been doing it, and he's, potentially going to surpass me. I've been doing this. I should know this. I should be training him. I shouldn't be asking him for questions. He should be asking me, right? That is a huge thing that I think most people can kind of relate to. And it's hard because it's like, I am supposed to be the lead on this, therefore, and again, this is all a state of mind, how open-minded an individual is to understanding and accepting, hey, this is great. I have an individual who is, I am no longer considered the smartest person in the room, regardless if they've got a year of experience or 20 years of experience. I'm going to take that at face value. Again, way easier said than done. And will that ever change? I don't know. I don't think so. I think there's too many other factors involved that will continue to keep that lack of confidence, unfortunately, circulating through the community if you cannot understand that it's happening and do things to lessen it. Because I think at some point everybody is going to feel, some sort of way when a new person gets hired and they've done so great, they're on the same task as you, they've done a little better, and they get a raise, for example. But sorry, Tyler, but you didn't, for example. That's going to happen. That's going to bring you back to, that should have been me. Why is that not me? What am I doing wrong? Questioning what my skills are that I'm doing wrong in comparison to what new hire is. So again, I think it's a mindset that you need to be aware of and know that even though it may not go away, it's not good to repress it. Obviously that, it's a talk about it, speak about it to family, friends, coworkers, whomever you feel comfortable with divulging those feelings to. But I don't think it'll ever be permanently gone. I think it needs to be chambered in a way that can strengthen you as a person. And it is extremely easier said than done, 100%. But if you can, you don't even need to master it, but if you can get a hold on that and be a little more in control of it, I think it'll make things a lot less stressful on said individual going forward, working with that person, seeing new people come in, maybe seeing other people get opportunities because of how great they did in the short amount of time they've been here than maybe what you should have gotten. So again, if it's just a mindset for that.
I think in my opinion, my 2 cents worth is using it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
And I know this is easier said than done, is don't compare yourself to others, but we all do that.
100%.
But I would say just kind of learning from my mistakes, because I used to be very competitive and always comparing myself to others. And I think in situations like this could be a good learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Learn from that person and try to change the way you deal with it.
Yeah.
Instead of being upset, just think, okay, maybe they found some resources that I didn't know about or something, and be open and sharing and kind of change the way that you deal with those situations, because that kind of stuff can really weigh heavy on you.
Oh yeah. And the worst thing too, and I don't want to instill fear into, any of the listeners out there, but sometimes there are people who come in where their head can't fit through the door, and they are new, and they do have the chops, and they do kind of flaunt that, and that just, I mean, that's the worst type, because that just reinforces your own, negative thoughts. When a new person gets hired, they're brand new, they have all the qualifications, and maybe they've only been doing it for 2 years, and they're difficult to work with. Everybody uses the term passionate. Oh, well, they're just a passionate individual. That's a professional way of saying that they're, kind of a jerk. So that's a dangerous thing too. And being encountered with that needs to be handled a little bit differently, from that angle. luckily the individuals that kind of come through our door, nobody's too big for their britches. So we all are pretty level-headed, well-grounded and stuff. And, if there is anybody to come in the door that doesn't really jive with the team, they end up finding their way out on their own. So, which is, a good thing, not to sidetrack too much, but even when like people are doing interviews and stuff, I would recommend getting an opportunity to speak with the team. If you guys are going to hire me, if I'm going to leave a job that pays me well, that I've grown to admire and develop, professional relationship with, to jump to a whole new company where I am the bottom of the totem pole now. Well, I want to know who I'm working with. Are these decent people, right? How resourceful are they going to be for me? Can I, rely on them? Can they rely on me? Are we going to work well together? And they may pay you great. They may have great benefits. They may be, a top tier company, but the people you work with are unpleasant. Nope. I wouldn't take that, because that could just make work miserable every single day, on top of other, mental factors that you're trying to battle with just being in this field, because it is extremely competitive. I see people who are nowadays questioning if they should even get into the cyber field because of how competitive it is. And obviously I would never deter anybody from doing it, but I don't blame where they're coming from by any means. There is, just if you kind of comb through LinkedIn, some of the job applications for some medium to large size companies, they got over 100, 1,000, 1,500 applicants. You're just going to fall into the water. You're not going to be noticed. It is extremely competitive, but shouldn't be a deterrent. But I can definitely see why people may say, maybe the cyber field isn't where I want to go, but I like computers and I like the IT industry. What else can I do? So, yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts on that part.
So we're getting down towards the end of the show. You have any closing comments?
I guess what I would kind of leave off with is, just kind of encompassing everything together with, is this a field that you, i.e. individual, is interested in? Do you have the time, and this for I'm going to speak for pen testing specifically, but overarching for the cyber field in general, right? Is this something that you can commit time to? Is this something that you can do outside of work on a pretty regular basis? Is this something that you can understand how competitive it is? Understand that you're going to meet a handful of people that may not see things the same way as you, or may carry themselves in a more cocky manner than what you would be acceptable with. If those, because not every place is going to be the perfect place, but that, some of those issues are small infractions that every company's going to have. So that'll be something you'll have to deal with, but are you okay with that? And if you are, then this is a great field, right? The competitiveness urges individuals to try harder, right? The whole OffSec motto is to try harder, not just for the exam, but like in other realms, and however which way you take the term try harder, better yourself, be better than where you were yesterday, a month before, a year ago. Always put yourself in a situation where you're going to look back in a year and say, I'm glad I did that. Because ultimately you are, if nobody else is in your corner, then be in your own corner, right? Be yourself in your own corner. If nobody's going to help and support you, you don't need them, right? Show them that you can do it by yourself without anybody else's help, and that'll definitely bring you very far. So, yeah, those are just kind of some of my last minute thoughts.
Well, thanks for joining us. It was good chatting with you and getting to learn your story and hear your advice.
Yeah, absolutely, Philip. I greatly appreciate you having me on.
It was an honor. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to The Phillip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Phillip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Phillip Wylie. Until next time.